We're actually going to Samkele, Maseko. Samkele, I was under the impression that we're going live already. Give us a sense of expectation outside the Johannesburg High Court.
Well, essentially, Desiree, the court sitting for Ace Magashule's bid to have his suspension lifted by the South Gauteng High Court will be sitting virtually with those heavyweight senior counsels employed by the African National Congress against their suspended Secretary-General, Advocate Wim Tingroef. Advocate Breitenbach will be leading the charge for the African National Congress in their defense, with the president of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, having deposed an affidavit, as well as NEC member Mduduzi Manana in support of the NEC decision, who had also stepped aside, and the KwaZulu-Natal Deputy Chairperson Michael Mabuyakhulu has also deposed an affidavit. But just to give you a sense of what's happening around here, I'm going to ask my colleague just to show you the visuals that are here. You can see that there is a big truck that has been set up here outside court by Ace Magashule's supporters for when he addresses them, when and if he comes here to court to see them. The roads have been cordoned off here outside the Johannesburg South Gauteng High Court. Even on my right as well, there is a relative entrance towards and coming towards court. There is a heavy police presence around court here for this court appearance of the Secretary-General of the ANC, who was suspended. And he is essentially saying that his suspension must be lifted. He is also testing the validity and the constitutionality of the ANC's step-aside resolution, saying that it's not in line with the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. We do have one of his supporters who is from time to time in trouble with the ANC. That is Mr. Carl Niehaus. Just essentially, Mr. Niehaus, the essence of the SG's case, why do you deem it important that he takes the very same organization that is supposed to be enforcing its resolutions, but once essentially have them thrown out by the courts?
I'm here as the spokesperson of Umkhonto we Sizwe Military Veterans Association, and we support the Secretary-General in his assessment that the stepping aside resolution has been amended by the National Working Committee and subsequently the National Executive of the ANC, that the National Working Committee had no right to implement the suspension against him, and in fact that the whole suspension process and the stepping aside enforcement is unconstitutional in terms of the national constitution of our country, that states that every citizen is innocent until found guilty by a court of law.
If Mr. Magashule loses this court bid, are you willing to accept that he must then step aside, or are you going to persuade him to appeal this particular judgment if he were to found guilty? And if he is cleared, what's the way forward for the ANC's people, particularly allowed to Mr. Magashule?
Let's not jump the gun. We are here to hear the ruling of the court. We are hopeful that this court will rule in favor of the Secretary-General, because we believe strongly that he has a very strong case and that he has been treated most unfairly. What happens in terms of the outcome of this ruling, let's not speculate about it, but what I can tell you, that as members of Umkhonto we Sizwe Military Veterans Association, we want to work for unity in the African National Congress. We don't believe that the suspension of the Secretary-General of the ANC is working in favor of unity. In fact, we believe it is working for divisions and factionalism, and we want to see an end to that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carl Niehaus. So essentially, that is the stage here. It's been set. My colleague is also just going to show you visuals of some of the few ANC supporters who've gathered here to support the suspended Secretary-General of the ANC. The numbers are not as they would have hoped, particularly knowing that there is a third wave that is hanging over the province of Gauteng and the country at large due to the high and escalating numbers of COVID-19 infections. Just yesterday, you had over 13,000 infections of South Africans whom tested positive of COVID-19. And you can see that it's as open as one would be in a normal day, as the supporters have not gathered here to support the suspended Secretary-General of the ANC, with the ANC president saying that it's unprecedented that a sitting official of the governing party, a Secretary-General, takes his own organization to court on the very same resolutions and constitution he is supposed to be enforcing, but wants those resolutions to be set aside by the courts. Desiree.
Samkele, I know we're speaking about the African National Congress, but that part of town that you're reporting from usually has a very high concentration of numbers of people, especially hawkers around there. But I see it's quite clean today. Is that as a result of government efforts around COVID-19, or is there anything else?
Well, Desiree, I can't say it's as a result of government's enforcement of COVID-19 regulations. We do know that Premier of the province, David Makhura, has said, and also the MEC of Education, Panyaza Lusufi, yesterday, where our colleague Matla Kokomani was, that they, as the Gauteng provincial leadership and government, would try and persuade national on harsher restrictions when it comes to COVID-19 numbers and restrictions here within the economic hub of the country, as it's essentially being seen as the epicenter of the third wave, particularly this metro where we are in the city of Johannesburg. It is the hub and it is the hotspot of COVID-19 infections currently in this third wave. We do know that they're trying to persuade the National Command Council, the NCCC, when it comes to COVID-19 regulations. Even the president, when he was speaking in Cape Town during that launch of the Ports Authority company, that new company, President Ramaphosa did say that they are looking at new measures that may be imposed on Gauteng in order to minimize and to eliminate the escalating numbers and limit them of COVID-19 infections in the province. Premier David Makhura saying that he had a chat with the CEO of Netcare, who had said that their hospitals are now full to the brim and there's no more space within ICU beds when it comes to the issues of COVID-19 infections. Even public hospitals, they are also full to the brim when it comes to infections in the province. They have imposed restrictions on the sale of liquor, alcohol within the province, but one does not know what the government may do when it comes to the next meeting of the National Command Council when it comes to the COVID-19 infections in the province. But numbers of hawkers here are not as usual as they are in normal times, Desiree. But I can't say it's due to government imposing new restrictions or it's a matter of this court case. Only time will tell.
Samkele, let's take it back to Ace Magashule now and the African National Congress. We've heard President Cyril Ramaphosa saying it's very surprising that the Secretary-General of an organization whose rules he's supposed to abide to is taking them to the courts. Will the outcome of today's proceedings make a difference in terms of the posture of the African National Congress?
Essentially, Desiree, this court case is the two-day sitting. It starts today and it will continue up until tomorrow, when they will wrap up with their presentations and with their arguments and counter-arguments to the judges of this particular South Gauteng High Court. Judge Telegram will be hearing this particular matter, and it will then be left to them to go and to examine the merits of the arguments presented and the counter-arguments presented by those defending the African National Congress. But essentially, if Ace Magashule wins this court bid, he will then be brought back as the Secretary-General of the ANC. His suspension will be lifted, pending which the ANC does not appeal that particular verdict. But also, if the ANC wins the court case, Ace Magashule has already hinted that he will appeal that particular judgment of this court. The ANC is not taking this case lightly, in the form that they have employed and briefed Advocate William Tim Groove and Advocate Breitenbach, who are two senior counsels. There is a third senior counsel which the ANC has briefed. In fact, it's 3 senior counsels that they have briefed for this court case to go up against Advocate Dalimpofu, who will be representing the suspended Secretary-General of the African National Congress, Ace Magashule. And the briefing attorneys in this particular matter, the instructing attorneys that have been given this particular brief are Eric Mabuza attorneys, who are representing the ANC suspended Secretary-General Ace Magashule. But on a political front, this does not change the balance of forces within the National Executive Committee of the ANC. As in that exclusive interview that we had with him as the SABC, he did say that the dominant faction within the NEC and within the NWC is the so-called CR17 faction within the ANC. He also looked at the various regional conferences taking place now. Cyril Ramaphosa's support in the ANC was further boosted in Limpopo when Puleshai won the regional conference on Phnom Mashabane region, which is the Mawapane region within Limpopo, which the president of the ANC ended up closing on Monday. We saw him addressing that regional conference virtually. We do know that there are also a number of regional conferences in KwaZulu-Natal that are supposed to take place. We do know that the likes of Zandile Kumete, who are aligned to the Secretary-General of the ANC, Ace Magashule, are under siege within that particular region of the biggest region of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal. And just to look at the vehicle that's coming by here, this particular V-Class, German machine V-Class, is a vehicle of people who are aligned and who are working with the Secretary-General of the ANC, Ace Magashule. You can see this particular individual here. He works with the SGO office and is an ally of Ace Magashule. You can see the guy with the black beanie. That's the bodyguard of Ace Magashule, and they are essentially here to see and to scout on what and check the security measures if Magashule will come and address them. So those are people aligned and working in Ace Magashule's office, and his personal bodyguard there in the black jacket and the black beanie. So they're here to essentially see the stage that has been set. You can see that they're also going up to stage. They had anticipated that Magashule will come here to court to address his supporters later on sometime during the day just to greet, but we don't know, since this is a 2-day sitting, of whether Magashule will indeed come and address his supporters. But only as the day goes on, we'll see whether he will come out. But he is essentially, Ace Magashule, trying to fight for his own political survival in the ANC, as he's also in the courts of law in Bloemfontein with his asbestos case matter of corruption of over 256 million rands currently being moved from the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court and going for a pre-trial at the Bloemfontein High Court on the 8th of August. Ace Magashule has also been going to support former President Zuma at the Pietermaritzburg High Court. So he is an individual who is legally and politically embattled within the state when it comes to the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa on charges of fraud, corruption, money laundering and racketeering, and also having stepped aside as the Secretary-General of the ANC, which he refused and was thus suspended. And the ANC now, the NWC, the NEC is contemplating adding more charges against the Secretary-General of the ANC for ill discipline and for sowing divisions within the party, particularly within that court appearance of former President Jacob Zuma in July, where Ace Magashule, for the first time since being elected SG of the ANC, he went to support former President Zuma and addressed that political gathering with Tony Yengeni and Carl Niehaus, who may also be conferred with charges by the African National Congress.
Samkele, in terms of people who are taking part in the process, do we know who has arrived?
At this point in time, no senior leader of the ANC has arrived here in court to support Ace Magashule. We do know, and we have spoken to Carl Niehaus, who's the spokesperson of the disbanded MK-MVA, who are contesting that disbandment by the ANC top 6, calling Gwede Mantashe, the national chairperson of the ANC, a dictator, saying that he is acting in an un-ANC manner. But no other senior leader of the ANC has arrived here in court at this point in time. Just a few numbers numbers that are trickling in here outside court to support Ace Magashule, the Secretary-General of the ANC. But what we can say is that he is definitely around, as you saw, those particular individuals who are around his protection detail and staff within his office as SGO and also in his individual capacity, particularly that short guy that we showed you. His name is Chris. He is in the personal office of the Secretary-General Ace Magashule.
Samkele, thank you so much for setting the scene for us. Of course, we will be returning to pick up events live as they begin.